and we're playing a little game regarding the draft picks from this, I guess we should say, this May, and wondering which of these draft picks will be starters come day one. I'd imagine this list probably isn't going to be very long, but I wanted to kind of kick it around and get your thoughts, gentlemen, as well as everybody listening in the chat room. If you want to call and give us your thoughts on that as well, you can. I'll start with you, Mickey. Out of the draft picks that we just selected, 4 weeks ago, who do you think will be starters day one come September?
What constitutes a starter, Nick?
On the top of the depth chart at the position.
I don't know. I don't know that any will be.
Okay.
To start the season. Now, I mean, I love what I'm hearing out of OTAs, how we're running a lot of 2 running back sets with Hill and Gio both in the backfield, reminiscent of the old, James Brooks, Ickey Woods. Even though Ickey Woods was a fullback, he was leading rusher at the time for that season. I'm excited about that. So, maybe he won't be listed on the depth chart as top, but man, that'd be pretty awesome to have that. I also think Denard has been playing. I've heard that he's playing really well in the slot so far. So, that depends. On do they really mark the third corner as a starter? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I think both those guys are going to be contributors. But we may have no official starters to start the season, or even at the midpoint out of this group. But we will have contributors.
Definitely going to have contributors. There's no question about that. And you kind of talked about this last week, Anthony, and that you believe that the starting center will be Bodine day one.
Good memory. I didn't know if you remember that or not. But, yeah, I think there's a good chance of that. I think they like him. I think they moved up to get him. And I put up a post on Wednesday about a little scouting report and how Bodine fits with the Bengals scheme by Rob Rang of CBS Sports. He's kind of their draft guy, and he talked about how that's a great fit and how many other teams probably devalued him. But for the specific scheme that the Bengals run, Bodine probably does a pretty good job, and I don't think he's really been in the mix for that starting spot quite yet, but we may see him crack it. I think Jeremy Hill has a great shot at being he could be number 2 on the depth chart, but he could be seeing significant snaps as a starter would. I also wouldn't count out, not necessarily as a starter, but as a contributor, Marquise Flowers, the 6th-round pick, I believe it was, out of Arizona. He's an athletic guy, very active. I think he's a little lean for a linebacker, but he does a lot of good things well, and I think he reminds people of Emmanuel Lemur, and the Bengals coaching staff seem to be very high on him. So I wouldn't count him out on not making the team and or contributing on in some capacity this year.
I think the fact that the Bengals moved up to get Bodine says a lot. It speaks volumes, considering they've moved up 3 times in the history of the franchise. So I agree with AC. I think Bodine's probably, barring something unforeseen happening, it's an injury or whatnot in training camp. You can't argue with AC saying Bodine could be your starter day one at center. Now, at the same time, he's got to earn it for sure. If he's not playing well, certainly they're not going to just throw him out there at center. They have some backup situations there with Pollock. Don't forget a guy like Trevor Robinson. So there is some depth at center, believe it or not. The question is whether or not is it good depth. That's the big question. I guess we're hearing some reports. Denard running with the ones. We've heard reports about Hill running with the ones. When I look at Hill and Bernard, it's almost like there's not a 1, 2, and a 3. It's 1A, 1B, and then 3. And you could really with Bernard, and that's just, you could say that for almost any NFL team right now with the running back situation. If you have 2 good running backs, I like hearing that. The Bengals are going back. What is it? The T formation. I can't remember what it's called when you have 2 backs side by side.
Wishbone? Is that what it is? Wishbone?
I don't know if it's wishbone. What is not full house?
The wishbone has a 2 running back.
I'm trying to, off my head, I'm trying to think of old plays from the Madden playbook, and I can't remember the name of the formation. But it's cool. It's like going back to the 80s days where, you've got Icky and James Brooks side by side in the backfield. I think it's cool. It gives defenses a different look, which is something that, probably isn't such a bad thing in today's NFL, rather than strictly showing the I formation. And with two capable backs in the backfield who can catch the football, that's where it will become really beneficial for this offense. I don't know if Denard will start day one, guys. I think there are a lot of guys in that secondary and in that cornerbacks group that he's got to really elevate past them. I'm not saying that he can't, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does, but that's just my thinking. So if I had to pick one starter for day one, I'll predict, like Anthony, Russell Bodine. I know I'm copying out there, I guess. It's a good pick, right, AC?
Yeah, it's solid. And why I think part of the reason why I think Hill will see some significant carries is because I think, and you heard the running backs coach Kyle Kasky talk about it, they're going to have Gio Bernard line up in the slot as a receiver sometimes as well. So they're going to find ways to get both of those guys on the field at the same time. And Gio, he's an excellent runner, but you could almost say he's almost as good of a receiver as he is a running back. And if you can put him in the slot and use him, even if it's just as a decoy, and maybe do a delayed draw back to Hill, that could open some things up and really help out the running game. So I think the more you have both of those guys on the field, if they show that they're, valuable and effective, the better it is for this offense.
Well, I'd love to hear your feedback. Email me insidethejungle@spnt.tv. Who do you think out of this draft class will be starters come day one in September for the Cincinnati Bengals? All right, it's now.